If you've ever EQ'd a sound just because you think you need to, the chances are you've probably also found it very frustrating. Maybe you boosted the bass and you've ended up with a boomy low end, or boosted the highs and ended up with a harsh sound. Maybe you cut some of the mids and ended up with a thin or weak mix. Well, don't worry, because everyone goes through that. But when you understand how to use it properly, it can make all the difference. So in this video, I'm going to share a simple but powerful framework so that you'll be able to EQ absolutely anything without the guesswork. And if you want my 30 most powerful mixing tips, you can download my guide completely free below this video. It's going to help your music sound better within minutes. Now, there are several different types of EQ, like graphic, analog modeled, and parametric, but essentially they all do one thing: control the volume of specific frequencies. But why would you even want to do that? Well, most of us can understand that we can adjust the volume of different elements in a mix. For example, we don't want the vocals too loud or the drums too loud because they'd hide everything else. EQ just takes that concept to a deeper level. We don't want any particular frequencies too loud or too quiet because we're looking for balance, so we need to adjust the volume of these different frequencies. Now, it may seem obvious if you already know that, but this actually tells us something very important about EQ that most people overlook. Imagine a prime, succulent T-bone steak cooked to perfection and a bowl of ice cream, two of my favorite foods and both delicious, but together, not so much. And no amount of seasoning will ever make that combination taste good. So in this analogy, EQ is like the seasoning of each ingredient. It can enhance what's already there, but it can't fundamentally change the taste. And this is the point that most people miss. EQ doesn't make sounds better, it makes them fit better in context. So the first step of EQing is really to pick sounds that work well together in the first place. Here's a really quick example of what I mean. If we play this track, we've got barely any EQ. But now let's put on this different drum beat. It just completely kills the track. And spending more time selecting complementary sounds is always a better use of time than trying to EQ them afterwards. Now, picking sounds that work together is a whole different topic, so let me know in the comments if you want me to make a video on that. But in a nutshell, using recipes, aka reference tracks, is the fastest way to learn which ingredients are going to work well together. But assuming you've followed a recipe and you've already got sounds that work pretty well together, it's time to season them. And that's when we run into our next problem. Look at this bass. See these frequencies? And this piano. It's got frequencies way down here and also way up there. And what about these vocals? Exactly the same thing. Basically, every sound takes up more frequencies than we might think at first, which means we've got too many sounds competing for the same frequencies. This means you get build-ups in certain areas, like too salty, blah, or different elements fighting to be heard, like a bland mess, instead of getting that finely balanced meal that we want. Oh, my mouth's watering. Now, this happens particularly a lot in the mid-frequencies, as most sounds usually have some sort of mid-range frequencies, so we can end up with these big build-ups where these sounds overlap. Now, EQs give us a few specific tools to help shape these frequencies, so let's have a quick look at them on this parametric EQ. The first is a bell curve, which basically looks like a bell, and you can sweep around and take out or boost separate frequencies. Then we have a cut, which is usually a low cut to take up the low frequencies over here on the left, or a high cut, which would be the opposite and take up the high frequencies over here, like so. Then we've got a low shelf, which looks like a low shelf, and then the opposite of that would be a high shelf, which looks like a high shelf. So we can select the frequency we want to affect, like so. We can decide by how much we want to duck or to boost it with the gain control, and then we can decide how accurate or how focused in on a specific frequency we want to be with the Q control, and that's pretty standard for most parametric EQs. Now, of course, there are lots of other controls within different EQs, but these are the most common and the most important ones. But how do we know which frequencies to cut or boost in which sounds? I struggled with this for years, but when I finally understood it, everything changed for me and EQing became easy when I implemented the framework I'm about to show you. Okay, so imagine that this glass is our mix. That's the maximum amount of frequencies we have to use. Now imagine each of these balls is a separate element within our mix. So we might have the vocals, we might have the guitar, we might have each of the separate drums, like a kick, a snare, tambourine hat, etc. And just imagine these timed, 5 times. So you might have 80 tracks overall. Now, if you start putting these balls in here, watch what happens. We're going to fill up this mix like this. And we might do that and fill up the whole thing and still have some of these left over because we've already used all our frequencies. So what do we do in that situation? Well, we can try and crush it all together, but you end up with this big mug of soup basically, which is what a muddy mix sounds like. However, if we prioritize some of these balls and make them into big balls, like the vocals, let's make that into a big ball. The guitar, or the lead synth, say, so vocals, lead synth, let's make those into big balls. And now watch what happens if we put those in first. A big ball there, a big ball there, a big ball there, and a big ball there. So we've got 4 big balls in that glass. And now all we have to do is make sure these little balls fit around those big balls. So what we end up with is a glass of something that actually has character and actually has priorities that we can understand, as opposed to this big messy soup that nobody wants. That's why he's sad, and that's why he's happy. So then the question becomes, what elements get priority? Well, it's fairly simple if you think about it. The main vocal or lead synth is usually what people are going to sing along to, so that's a definite priority. Depending on what kind of music you're making, the bass line and the kick drum are very important. They underpin the rhythm and the low end. Then we've got the main clap or snare. That's likely to be another priority as well, to dance against the kick. And if you put them in order into that glass, EQing them one by one, then you bring in your backing vocals or your pads and your effects like sweeps and risers. And when I figured this out, it made all the difference. So let's look at how to do that in the DAW. First, working in priority, in solo mode, get rid of the frequencies that a sound clearly doesn't need. These vocals have already been processed, but we can still see we've got frequencies right down there, below 50 Hertz, that you'll never hear, so we're going to get rid of them first. Now most elements apart from the kick and the bass can usually be rolled off at about 80 to 100 Hertz, with a couple of exceptions like tom drums or other low percussion, and maybe male vocals you might want to have a few frequencies below 80 Hertz. But apart from that, I roll off as high as I can without adversely affecting the sound. For example, you don't need these sub-frequencies in a hi-hat. We know it's supposed to be high up in the mix, so we can get rid of that stuff straight away, and knowing the purpose of each sound is important here. You can also use frequency sweeps at this point to get rid of any harsh or unwanted frequencies, but the trouble with this method is any frequency boosted really hard is going to sound bad. So I find that this is only useful if something really sticks out as a dodgy frequency. Then you can choose a narrow Q setting and sweep through until you find that one particular frequency and duck it slightly. But as I said, if you do this with any frequency, it's going to sound bad, so I would use this with caution. Now this first step is only to be used for anything that really shouldn't be there. And from this point on, context is everything, so keep solo off. Now if we start with whatever is the most important sound in your track, usually the main lead synth or vocal, we can then bring in each of those elements in order of priority, and as that happens you are going to get these shared frequencies occurring. Now this is natural. When you listen to music in a live environment, you are going to get these crossing over frequencies, and it's only a problem when it adversely affects what's already working. So in this example, we started the track by bringing in the vocals, we took out the obviously unneeded frequencies, then we're going to bring in the kick. Well, that's already working, but we'll give it a little bit of a high shelf boost so we get that tick popping out. So now let's bring in the bass. We've got the mid bass, which we've taken out the low end from because we don't want it fighting with our sub bass. The sub bass we've taken out the high end because we don't want it fighting with our mid bass. So all of these are working together at the moment. The next most important thing I'd probably bring in this track is going to be the main synth riff. So let's bring that in. I'm going to put this all into mono. It's going to be easier to hear. I find that the vocals are losing a little bit of clarity when I bring in the main synth riff, but the vocals for me are more important. So what I'm going to do is bring an EQ onto our synth riff, and I'm going to open up the EQ from the vocals, and I'm just going to see where they might be clashing. Now you can actually route them together using the Pro Q at least, but it doesn't matter which EQ you're using. We can just manually open them next to each other and see. We can see there's a lot of shared frequencies here. This is our synth, these are our vocals. So I think they're probably fighting around here. So I'm just going to sweep around and wait until I get some clarity back. So it's this body here. Much clearer. But sometimes, of course, it's a bit trickier to decide what has priority. Check out this example where we've got a piano and guitar. Both are backing instruments, so we've already decided that the vocal takes priority, but these also share frequencies, so which one do you prioritize? We can see we've got this crossover of frequencies again. So I'm going to take down the guitar a little bit here. And I might go halfway and just blend them together a little bit better because they're both backing instruments. Ultimately, the vibe should always be king. So what do you feel should be the priority? And this is where taste and artistry comes into mixing. Maybe you can use a reference track in a similar genre to help you decide, but really sometimes you just have to make a decision. There's no wrong or right, there's just option A or option B, and you can try both out and see which you prefer. Mostly though, I found that the problems come when you decide not to prioritize anything. That's when you get this scenario of a muddy mix. And this priority framework works on a micro level too. For example, within layered instruments. And by layered instrument, I mean multiple sounds coming together to create one instrument. So be intentional and think about what each layer is bringing to the sound and which one is more important within that layered sound. But remember, this sound has to be thought of as one instrument with its certain hierarchical priority within the mix. So ultimately, when you've got that layered instrument sounding great, you might have to cut out some frequencies of the whole thing to work in the mix, but you're already doing it within context, so that's okay. Now, of course, EQ is only part of mixing. You've got saturation, compression, reverb, etc., and you have to get them right, otherwise no amount of EQ will make your mix sound good. So if you want to learn all of this stuff and have the action steps and resources to help you actually internalize it, you can check out my mixing course below. And if you want to see the 30 biggest lessons I've learned over the last 25 years of professional mixing, click this video popping up here to instantly improve your mixes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you over at that next video.